My mother-in-law said I was just a guest, and told me to move out so her daughter's family could move in. She didn't realize I was covering groceries, insurance, utilities, and repairs every month. The next morning I stopped every payment and called movers. Suddenly, "You need to move out. You're just a guest here." That's the first thing my mother-in-law said to me that morning while I was sitting at the kitchen table paying the monthly bills. Electricity, water, internet, insurance, groceries. Every single one of them was coming out of my account like always. I looked up at her and honestly thought she was joking. "Sorry, what?" She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "My daughter Melissa and her kids need this house. Their lease ends soon. They'll be moving in." I waited for the rest of the sentence. Something like temporarily or will make space. But it never came. "So where exactly do you think I'm going?" I asked. He shrugged. "You can find an apartment. You're just staying here anyway. Just staying here." I slowly turned my laptop so the screen faced me again and finished scheduling the electricity payment. Then I looked at my husband Eric, who was standing near the fridge pretending to be very interested in his phone. "Eric," I said, "your mom just told me to move out of our house." He shifted his weight but didn't look at me. "Melissa really needs help right now." I waited. Nothing else came. "So your solution is kicking me out?" "It's not like that." Diane jumped back into the conversation. "This house belongs to our family. Melissa needs it more than you do. You're just a guest here." "A guest." I stared at her for a second, trying to understand how she could say that with such confidence. Then I asked the question that should have ended the whole conversation. "Who do you think pays for this house?" She answered immediately. "My son, obviously. He bought it before you even came along." Eric stayed quiet. He didn't correct her. Didn't say a single word. That told me everything I needed to know. Diane smiled like the decision had already been made. "You have 2 weeks. That should be enough time to pack your things." 2 weeks. I slowly closed my laptop. "Hey," I said. Eric finally looked up. "Okay." "Yeah," I said. 2 weeks sounds fair." Diane nodded like she had just solved a complicated family problem. Neither of them noticed that the electricity payment, the water payment, the internet payment, the grocery delivery, the home insurance, and the maintenance service all came from my bank account. And none of them noticed that I had just canceled every single one. Because the next morning I made a few more phone calls. One to the bank, one to a moving company, and one to a lawyer. That's when things in that house started falling apart faster than anyone expected. The next morning I woke up earlier than everyone else. The house was quiet. Eric and his mother were still asleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was log into my bank account. Electricity autopay. Water bill. Internet. Home insurance. The weekly grocery delivery subscription. Then I called the maintenance company that handled repairs for the house. "Hi, this is Rebecca. I need to stop all services starting today." They confirmed it within a minute. After that I called the moving company. "Tomorrow morning," I told them. "Early." The woman on the phone asked how big the house was. 3 bedrooms. She said they would bring a full crew. When I finished, I closed the laptop and sat there for a moment. The kitchen suddenly looked different to me. The cabinets I had paid for. The appliances I had picked out. The table I bought when Eric and I first moved in. By the time Diane walked into the kitchen, I was already dressed for work. She opened the fridge and frowned. "There's barely any food." "That's strange," I said. She didn't respond. Eric came in a few minutes later. "Morning," he said. I grabbed my bag. "Morning." Before I left, Diane stopped me near the door. "You should start packing today," she said. "Melissa is already looking at schools nearby." I nodded. Good idea. I went to work like it was a normal day. Around noon my phone started buzzing. Eric. I ignored it. 2 minutes later it rang again. Then again. Finally I answered. "Rebecca," he said, "did you forget to pay the electricity bill?" "No." "Well, they just sent a notice that the autopay was removed." "Yeah." Silence. "Why would you do that?" I leaned back in my chair. "You said I'm just a guest, right?" "That's not what we meant." "That's exactly what your mother meant." Another pause. "The internet is also down," he said. "Really? Rebecca, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking." His voice changed. So what are you trying to do? Nothing, I said. Just acting like a guest. When I hung up, I already knew things at the house were getting tense. But the real surprise wasn't going to happen until the next morning. Because at 8 a.m. sharp a moving truck was scheduled to arrive. And neither Eric nor his mother had any idea what the movers were actually coming for. At exactly 8 the next morning a large moving truck pulled up in front of the house. I was already outside waiting. 3 movers stepped out and started unloading dollies and boxes. One of them walked over with a clipboard. "You're Rebecca?" "Yeah. We're ready when you are." I nodded and opened the front door. Inside the house Diane was in the kitchen talking on the phone. Eric was sitting on the couch half awake. Both of them looked confused when the movers walked in behind me. "What's going on?" Eric asked. "Packing," I said. Diane ended her call and walked into the living room. "What is this?" "The moving company." Her face tightened. "You're moving already? Good. That's faster than I expected." I didn't answer. The movers started carrying empty boxes upstairs. Eric watched them. "Rebecca, you didn't say you were leaving today." "I didn't." Diane frowned. "Then why are they here?" I picked up the folder I had brought with me and set it on the table. "Because I am." She looked confused. "You just said you weren't leaving." "I'm not moving," I said. "You are." The room went quiet. Eric stared at me like he didn't understand the sentence. Diane laughed once. "Don't be ridiculous." I opened the folder and slid a document across the table. "Deed to the house." Eric picked it up first. He read the first few lines and his expression changed immediately. Then he looked at the name listed under owner. "My, only mine." Diane grabbed the paper from him. "That's not possible." "It is," I said. Eric looked at me. "You told me the house was under both our names." "No," I said. "You assumed that." Years earlier I had bought the house with money from a company I sold. Eric had good credit but no savings at the time. We agreed it would stay under my name until we figured things out later. Later never came. Diane flipped through the papers quickly. "This doesn't change anything," she said. "It changes everything." I pulled another document from the folder. "Eviction notice." Eric blinked. "Eviction? You told me I had 2 weeks to leave my house," I said. "So I had my lawyer prepare this yesterday." Diane's face turned red. "You can't do that to family." "You already did." Behind us the movers came downstairs. "Where do you want us to start?" one of them asked. I pointed toward the hallway. "Guest room first." Diane stared at me. "You're kicking us out?" "Yes." Eric finally spoke. "Rebecca, we can talk about this. We already did yesterday. But Melissa is counting on this place." "That sounds like your problem." Diane slammed the papers onto the table. "You're destroying this family." I looked at her for a moment. "No," I said. "You did that yesterday when you told me I was just a guest." The movers started carrying furniture toward the door. And that's when Eric said something that made the situation even worse than I expected. As the movers started carrying boxes out of the guest room, Eric finally stood up. "This is insane," he said. "You're throwing my family out over a misunderstanding." I looked at him. "A misunderstanding?" "Yes. Mom didn't know the house was technically yours." Technically. That word stuck with me. Diane was pacing around the living room while the movers walked past her with lamps and boxes. "You're humiliating us," she said. "No," I said. "You did that yourself." Eric ran his hands through his hair. "Rebecca, just stop the movers and we'll figure this out." I shook my head. "We already figured it out yesterday when you let your mother tell me to move out." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Diane did. "You're acting like a spoiled child. My daughter needs this house. You have money, you can go anywhere." That sentence actually made me laugh. "You still don't understand the situation." She crossed her arms. "Oh, I understand perfectly." "No," I said. "You really don't." I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. Then I turned the screen toward Eric. "Do you recognize any of these?" He leaned closer. "Monthly charges. Mortgage. Insurance. Electricity. Water. Internet. Maintenance. Every single payment listed under my account. Month after month. Year after year." His face slowly changed. "You've been paying all of this?" "All of it." Diane stepped closer. My son works too. Your son pays his car loan and his phone bill, I said. Eric didn't argue with that. The movers walked past again carrying one of Diane's suitcases. He watched them with growing panic. You can't just throw us out today, she said. Melissa and the kids are coming this weekend. That's not my problem. Eric looked at me again. So what happens now? You leave. And if we don't? I slid another paper across the table. My lawyer already filed the paperwork this morning. Eric read the first line. His eyes widened. Divorce. Yes. Diane stared at me. You're divorcing him because of this? No, I said. I'm divorcing him because he stood there while you told me I was a guest in my own house. Eric looked stunned. You're serious? Completely. The movers opened the front door again and started loading the truck. Diane grabbed Eric's arm. Tell her to stop this. He looked at the house, the papers on the table, and the moving truck outside. For the first time since all of this started, he seemed to realize something. Without me paying for everything, none of them had any idea how they were going to live here. And Melissa and her kids were still planning to arrive in 2 days. That was when Eric quietly asked the question he should have asked years ago. Rebecca, how much of our life was actually being paid by you? Eric was still holding my phone, staring at the list of payments. Rebecca, how much of our life was actually being paid by you? All of it, I said. He looked up slowly. What do you mean all of it? I took the phone back and scrolled a little further. The mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, repairs, the new roof last year, the kitchen remodel, your medical insurance when you changed jobs. Diane shook her head. That's not possible. I looked at her. You never wondered why Eric was always relaxed about money? Eric sat down on the couch like the weight of the room suddenly got heavier. I thought we were splitting things, he said. We were supposed to, I said. But you kept saying you were saving for investments. He stayed quiet. Because we both knew those investments never existed. The movers carried the last suitcase through the living room. One of them asked, Is everything from the guest room done? Almost, I said. Diane looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. This is unbelievable. No, I said. What's unbelievable is how comfortable everyone got living off me while treating me like I didn't belong here. Eric stood up again. Where are we supposed to go? I shrugged. You told me 2 weeks yesterday. I'm giving you today. Diane grabbed her purse. My daughter will hear about this. She probably should. Eric looked desperate now. Rebecca, if you stop this we can fix things. You had years to fix things. But divorce. You chose your side yesterday. The word hung in the air. Divorce. The movers finished loading the truck outside. One of them stepped inside. We're done. I nodded. Thanks. They walked back out, leaving the house strangely quiet. Eric looked at his mother. Melissa and the kids can't come here anymore. Diane didn't answer. Because for the first time she finally understood something. There was no house for her daughter. No utilities. No groceries. No one paying for anything anymore. The only person who had been holding that entire life together was standing in front of them with divorce papers. And I was done. Eric looked at me one more time. You're really walking away from this marriage? I picked up my bag. I'm walking away from being the only adult in it. I headed toward the door. Behind me I heard Diane say something quietly to Eric. And what she said next made the situation collapse even faster than I expected. Because apparently she had already promised Melissa something she had no way of delivering. As I reached the front door I heard Diane speaking to Eric behind me. You need to fix this before Melissa gets here. Eric looked at her. Fix what? The house situation. He stared at her for a moment. You told Melissa she could live here? Diane hesitated. Not just live here. Eric's face slowly tightened. Mom, what did you promise her? Diane finally said it. I told her the house would be hers. The room went completely quiet. Eric blinked. You what? She needs stability, Diane said. The kids need a permanent home. So you promised her my house? I said. She looked at me. You were supposed to move out. Eric rubbed his forehead. Melissa already packed, Diane added. I almost laughed. Then you should probably call her. Eric grabbed his phone immediately. The call went to speaker. Melissa answered on the second ring. We're already on the highway, she said. Kids are excited to see their new rooms. Eric looked at Diane. Then at me. Melissa, there's been a situation. What situation? The house, you can't move in. There was silence. What do you mean we can't move in? Diane tried to grab the phone. Eric moved it away. Mom made a promise she couldn't keep. Melissa's voice changed. I gave notice on my apartment. I leaned against the wall and watched the whole thing unfold. Eric said quietly, the house belongs to Rebecca. Another long pause on the phone. You're joking. No. Melissa hung up. Diane looked furious. You embarrassed your own family, she said to me. No, I said. You gambled with something that wasn't yours. Eric sat down again. For the first time he looked completely lost. Without the house, without my income, without any of the bills being covered, the reality of their situation was finally clear. Diane spoke again. Melissa has nowhere to go now. That's unfortunate, I said. Eric looked at me. You're really not going to help? No. He stared at the floor. The silence in the house felt heavy now. The same house that everyone thought they could control 24 hours earlier. I opened the door. Fresh air rushed inside. I'll send the rest of the divorce paperwork through my lawyer, I said. Eric didn't respond. Diane didn't either. They both just stood there in the living room that wasn't theirs, in a house they couldn't afford, waiting for a future that suddenly looked very different. I walked out and got into my car. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't filled with bill notifications. No mortgage reminders. No grocery deliveries. No insurance charges. Just silence. A week later I heard through a mutual friend that Eric had moved into a small apartment with his mother. Melissa and her kids ended up staying with relatives across town. And suddenly the entire family that once treated me like a guest was struggling to keep their finances together. Meanwhile I was still living in the same house. Quiet, peaceful, and finally occupied by the only person who had ever actually paid for it.